of you already know, I'm also an ordained minister and a medical doctor. I like to look at the model of healing in a holistic way. A holistic way. And so may I ask that God Almighty bless each of you, that you continue to have the courage, the fortitude, the determination, and the capacity to mete out mercy and forgiveness to the Americans who would offer you an apology. I believe that in time you will be compensated. And until I leave this earth, I will continue to fight for you. In the name of Jesus, and in the name of all those who divine providence has sent our way, I submit this as a solemn promise. God bless you.
May I call upon Ms. Eunice Kamau, Chairperson of the Kenya Council of Emergency Medical Technicians.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, survivors, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. My name is Eunice Wanjiko Kamau. I serve as the National Chairperson of the Kenya Council of Emergency Medical Technicians. And I want to start by first thanking the management of the August 7th Memorial, led by Natasha, for considering the inclusion of emergency responders to this 25th commemoration of the August 7th bomb blast. I am here to speak to the other side of the coin that came as a result of the blast. The blast marked the beginning of the emergency medical services in Kenya. It was after action review of the response that a gap in the scope of practice in the response that was identified. That led to a training needs assessment of the Kenya rescue teams that led to the first training of emergency medical technicians. This in 2000, a group of EMTs were retrained after that initial training and upgraded with the assistance of Emergency Medical Corps and USAID to train instructors who have continued with that journey of building the emergency medical services in Kenya. The number of emergency medical technicians in Kenya currently has passed the 1,500 mark. EMTs, in short, are the people who are trained to sit at the back of an ambulance to respond to emergencies when they happen and provide a gap of and speak to the continuum of care before the patients get to hospital. Majority of the people who died during the bomb blast could probably not have died had we had the training we have today. So the growth has been in different areas, evidenced by the development of a training curriculum that speaks to the human resource aspects, infrastructure in terms of training centers and response agencies, both in fire and emergency response. There has been policy development with the launch of the emergency medical care policy that was launched in 2021. There was the development of the emergency medical technicians and paramedics practitioners bill that is in waiting. There has been international collaboration in diverse aspects with Johns Hopkins International, Malteser International, Africa Fire Mission, Polish Center for International Aid, European Union, just to name a few, who have supported government and private sector in the development of emergency response. We look forward to more joint trainings in a view of creating standard response teams throughout the country, especially looking at the devolution through our annual symposium. In today's newspaper, the headline highlights a ticking bomb, a 3% increase from 2023 that puts unemployed youth at 2.97 million. 1.54 of those are aged between 20 years and 29 years. That is about 77% of the population. Yet, also looking at the emergency sector, there are not enough EMTs in the country to meet the needs of emergency response. Emergency response is broad, not only looking at EMTs, it also looks at firefighters, there is security personnel, just to name a few. So as I conclude, in the marking of this 25th anniversary of the bomb blast, I urge Cabinet Secretary for Health, Nakumicha Susan, and Principal Secretary Mary Muthoni Muriuki that as they address issues related to human resource health, to also look into the pre-hospital care as it feeds in the continuum of care. The newly formed established Kenya Health Professionals Oversight Authority to expedite the process of recognizing emergency medical technicians through the development of a national scheme of service for EMTs by working with the Public Service Commission and ensure enactment of the bill that is passing. And just to say thank you very much and God bless Kenya.
May I call upon Mr. Christopher Machin of the United States Embassy here in Nairobi.
Okay. Sure. Try. Hello, everybody, and good morning. Although I think it is actually afternoon now, so I had written my notes to say habari za asubuhi, but I don't know how to say good afternoon, so I'm just going to stick with good morning then. So I wanted to say, greet all of the friends and family and representatives of all of those who died on August 7th, 1998. The survivors and their families and friends who are with us today, all the official and distinguished guests from across Kenya and around the world, the chair and the fellow members of the board of directors of the August 7th Memorial Park, and everybody else who's here today, so all protocols observed. My name is Christopher Machin, and I'm the cultural attaché at the U.S. Embassy here in Kenya. And for nearly 4 years, it has been my privilege to represent the people of the United States and my colleagues at the embassy and across the U.S. government as a member of the board of directors of the August 7th Memorial Park. And it's been really wonderful to work with everybody on the park, and I just wanted to say a big acknowledgement to the chair of the board and to Natasha Mbugus, the general manager of the park, for putting together such a wonderful event today. I know she balanced many different interests and many different parties to bring everybody together today. So I want to say a big thank you to all of the members of the August 7th Memorial Park staff and board for bringing us together today. So in my capacity as the embassy rep, I do also want to invite everybody to join the U.S. Department of State online today at www.state.gov, that's S-T-A-T-E, state.gov, at 3:30 p.m. Kenya time, 8:30 a.m. Washington time, when the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, the Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs Mali Fee, and the former ambassador to Kenya, Prudence Bushnell, as well as the former chargé d'affaires in Tanzania at the time, now Ambassador John Lang, will offer remarks in Washington to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the embassy bombings in Kenya and Tanzania. On a personal note, as a diplomat who began his career just weeks after the bombing, I started in September of 1998. I'm honored to join the board and everyone gathered here today in remembering the victims of the terrorist attacks in Nairobi, Kenya, and Dar es Salaam, Tanzania on August 7th. Our loved ones, family members, friends, and co-workers to whom this green and quiet park is dedicated. The August 7th Memorial Park offers a unique place to remember those lost 25 years ago and to reflect on their legacy. It supports a vibrant community dedicated to honoring the victims, the survivors, and everyone affected by the attacks by working each and every day to promote peace in our hearts and homes, our neighborhoods, our countries, and our planet, and ensure that the terrible events of 1998 never happen again. In the days following the bombings, attacks intended to divide and disorient, Kenya and the United States forged an even stronger relationship, uniting in our focus to find the survivors and aid the injured. In the weeks and years that followed, we rebuilt together, establishing this memorial park and cementing our strong security partnership that continues to protect us all today. In the decades that followed, we've exchanged the experience and expertise to benefit our people and make the world safer through improving healthcare, food security, inclusive economic opportunities, and so much more. We've asked some of the people involved in strengthening and fortifying the collaboration between our countries following the events of August 7th, 1998, for their thoughts on that tragic day and how it has influenced their lives and the course of U.S.-Kenyan relations. I'm fortunate enough to be able to share their reflections with you today via a video. So hopefully the video will work. Technology is sometimes our friend, not always. So if I could ask whoever is controlling the screen behind me to play the video through the link that I provided earlier.
I was on the 21st floor of the Commerce Cooperative Bank building, which was shaking. I thought I was going to die. And I see the back of the U.S. Embassy that has melted, and the huge rubble from the Ufundi house, which had pancaked. The first thing in my mind was, where are our people? What we did see was what happened consequently. An amazing surgence of heroism, harambe, of helping.
Lori and I were assigned to U.S. Embassy Nairobi when the bomb blast occurred. We experienced, on a deep and personal level, the trauma and the tragedy of that day and its aftermath.
I must admit I was taken aback, surprised by the depth of feeling and the amount of trauma that was still particularly in the Kenyan staff.
I can look back on the event with much greater peace than I ever could before. I'm no longer on the path of anger. Two very profound lessons for me. Friendship and peace comes from intention. They don't just happen.
The Memorial Park is a green space that was set up in 2001 in honor of the victims and the survivors of the bombing. It's open to the public 365 days a year, and we receive people from all walks of life.
I was one of the original members of the August 7th Memorial Board and started talking about how the park might be financed and how it might be sustained going into the future.
I thought it was very important that we should do everything possible to memorialize and commemorate our colleagues who had been lost and who have been injured.
The people who were most injured made the decision to turn the target of hate into a training ground for peace.
The victims and survivors have a space where they can come and just vent. They can come and be heard. They can come and speak. If they want to meet with their peers, if they want to have a counseling session, if they just want to come and sit and cry the whole day, remember what happened on that day. Talk to different people. This is the space that we've given them.
The names inscribed in the park have always been a powerful symbol of the fact that these are names etched in stone and that will, in fact, last for quite a long time, long after all of us are gone.
Kenya
So if I may emphasize or share one more statement from Ambassador Prudence Bushnell, a quote that was featured in the film and a quote that's prominently displayed at the heart of the August 7th Memorial Museum. If you can create community, then you can face anything, even if it is extraordinarily painful. So for the past 4 years as a member of the board, as I wrap up my time here in Kenya, I wanted to say thank you, asante sana, for allowing me to join your community and to share in remembering the past and to work with everybody to rededicate ourselves to the difficult but necessary task of supporting a brighter and more peaceful future for ourselves and generations to come. So thank you all very much.
On my program notes, I have distinguished guests. I would say, and I've lived long enough to say it, that our distinguished guests were witnesses to the history which we are evoking today. And I have a feeling that although they may be people we read about in our daily papers as politicians and leaders, they come here first and foremost as human beings in sympathy and empathy. So I know that we Kenyans are sticklers for titles and observations and protocols. They're all my friends, so I'm just going to call them up one by one. May the first be a woman, Honorable Martha Karua.
Good afternoon, everyone. All protocols observed. Yes, we are here first and foremost as human beings. And for me, I'll begin by saluting the resilience of the survivors and the families of the departed. It is your resilience that has seen this event commemorated every year, and also the resilience of your friends and supporters. I want to urge that the day also be a day to celebrate those who departed. You have memories of them as families and friends. It's a day to reflect on their lives. For the survivors, it's a day to thank God that indeed you survived and lived to tell the tale. It is also a day to ask, has justice been done to the survivors and to the families of the departed? 25 years on, still waiting for compensation. I'm aware that some form of support was given to some families, 173, if my records are correct, of the victims, and which came from USAID. But I'm also aware that there's been ongoing battle in the US courts for compensation of the victims who are non-Americans. I'm more aware about the Kenyan case. And I've been reflecting this morning and asking, what could we have done better as a country, as government, because there was a period I was in government? What could we have done better to expedite compensation for the victims? What could the US government have done better? Yes, we are friends. What could we have done as friends to ensure that there is closure for the victims? It's better late than never. Apart from the court battle, I think that a time has come when the two governments must sit together and see what can be done. It is not enough to say the matter is in court. Both governments have a responsibility. As has been aptly said here, Kenya took the bullet on behalf of the US. We cannot continue waiting for justice for the victims. May this be the year that the victims of this terrible crime finally have closure and have their compensation. On a larger scale, we are talking about building peace so that such incidents do not happen. And it's not just about international peace. It's about local peace. All politics are local. We must begin with where we stand. What are we doing as Kenya to find peace within us? What are we doing as the international community to find peace for the world? Peace is brought by feelings of grievances, whether imagined or real. Conflict is brought by feelings of grievances, imagined or real. May we take time also to introspect, see what are the issues that are bringing grievances in our nation and how they can be solved. May we take time to introspect on what are the grievances in the international arena which could bring lasting peace. Exploitation, discrimination, injustice, because there cannot be peace without justice. Why should the victims be asking for medical support? Kenya should be having universal access to health for everybody. The victims would not suffer, or their relatives, and no Kenyan would suffer. There are things we can do as a country which make life easier, not just for the survivors, but for all our nationals. There are things we can do internationally. The world order is rigged against the weak nations. We are called poor. We are not poor. Our resources continue to be extracted mercilessly and to support the rich nations to continue with good life while we carry the burden. Look at the countries listed as the poorest. They are the countries richest in all manner of minerals and natural resources. So I'm saying, commemorating the bomb blast, we must go back to the question of peace in the world. And if we want to live as brothers, we have to treat each other as brothers and sisters, internally and externally. These are the things I suggest we ponder on today. May I not finish without starting where I should have begun. That I'm here with my colleagues, also representing our leader, the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, who brings his greetings. When you see me, see my brother Kalonzo and Wamalwa, know that the entire, and also Senator Kavindu and Manzo here, it means the entire Azimio fraternity is with you commemorating this occasion and asking, what can we do better? I'll say continue with your resilience, let's work together and let justice prevail. Asanteni.
Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka.
Thank you, John. The survivors and victims, the representatives, our friends from the embassy and friends on Akirago and your team, thank you so much for your invitation. Mimi sitakuwa na mambo mengi. Siku kama hii, Agosti tarehe 7 mwaka wa 1998, nilikuwa waziri wa elimu. I'd taken a fixed-wing flight to Hola to start with an agricultural show in Hola and Tana River, and then attended the first graduation ceremony of Garissa Teachers Training College, which eventually became now Garissa University. Itself became a victim of international terror. I remember we had to be called back quickly, went into a cabinet meeting, and the whole country was under the grip of an incredible situation. Then I realized that one of our cabinet colleagues was not there, the late John Kamotho. And now as it is, Ambassador Prudence Bushnell was in the office on the 21st floor in Honorable Joseph Kamotho's office at the cooperative building. Perhaps that's how she survived. We've seen our testimony. What followed there was amazing. Now, during the course of the events then, Kenyans in matatus, Kenyans from all walks of life, braved the situation, the tragedy, literally. And they were their brothers and sisters' keeper. They were not as trained as we had today from the wonderful lady, but they carried each other's burden. They never asked each other, what political party do you belong to? They were just Kenyans helping each other. And I think this is important for us to reflect even as now, as at this particular time as Kenyans. Could we live the example of Kenyans in 1998? Be our brothers and our sisters' keeper. When Americans have gone through difficult times, remember, September 11th had not happened. In fact, I was of the view that if the lesson from Nairobi had been taken seriously, September 11 could have been avoided. But maybe the world thought that is a tragedy in a third world country. Little did anybody know that was going to catch up with everybody. Dar es Salaam happened, Nairobi happened. The world assumed it's normal until September 11th happened. So this Green Park is indeed reminiscent in a way of what happened of September 11 in New York. And a lesson that we are all the same. We are one, wherever we are. I once was Minister for Foreign Affairs, and I remember appearing making a presentation before the UN Security Council, not once or twice or third or three times, severally. And when Berlin Wall collapsed, and the period of Cold War was seemingly at an end, the world had assumed that the time to reap the peace dividend had come. But what do we instead reap? Terrible tragedies. Senators, I'll just be talking to you in a minute. Instead of having the peace dividend, we had hot wars everywhere, a product of international hate and terrorism. Well, instead of the Berlin Wall collapsing and bringing with it thereafter peace, the world is hotter. Today, as I was driving here, I was listening to a young musician from Ukraine appearing before Steven Saka of BBC. And he had to come in, was in the front line fighting for his country, Ukraine. And if the world is not careful, the war on Ukraine by Russia could turn out to be the opposite of what indeed we have all hoped for. We cannot sit pretty, and we wish that the world will take responsibility together and put humanity together again. Well, we are hearing stories of military coup d'etats everywhere. As of yesterday, the military junta was supposed to hand over to ECOWAS on Sunday after the coup in Niger. Hot wars everywhere. But in this region, because we are at the Horn of Africa, literally, I don't know if you look at the map of Africa and see the Horn of Africa, that horn seems deadly. We are surrounded by a lot of instability as a country. Somalia, Ethiopia is even now beginning to deal with the situation again in the integration area of Ethiopia. We all know what's happening in Sudan, north and south. And then, of course, within the East African region, we are trying the best we can. We hope if Somalia joins East African community, things will be different. And therefore, growth of religious extremism, some of it pretty bizarre, as Kenyans will have witnessed in Shakahola. These are the challenges of our time. And so, Bwana Kiragu, as you hold us together, call us together here, we want to thank every Kenyan who braved this situation and others unborn. And I want to call on Jean Bahati, who spoke here, just before I end my presentation. If Jean, please, could be somewhere. I want to thank Senator Kavindu and the team of the Senate for what you are doing. Injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. And we hold the view that if we continue to work in justice as Kenyans against each other, we will continue to be a restless nation. Our American friends, you have done well. The Arlington, this is, of course, once reminds anybody who has been to the U.S. of Arlington place in Washington and Ground Zero place in New York. This is our Ground Zero. So many Kenyans died unnecessarily. It has been said we took the bullet on behalf of American friends. But we also want to say that the time to bring closure, I agree with my sister mother, the time to bring closure is now. Dr. Romana, is it Romana or Ramana? Thank you. Thank you and welcome home. You said you are 9th generation. We take it from today that you are a Kenyan because you have helped your brothers and sisters. Tusife moyo wa Kenya wenzangu. I know some of the people who got affected here personally. I don't know whether my brother Michael Kwale is here. He buried his wife a place towards Mwingi. I know Simon Kavisi could have been here. He became the TSC secretary. Even Zomo became the chair of the TSC commission. All affected because the Teachers Service Commission were housed here. And I was their minister at the time. Therefore, Teachers Service Commission continue being strong. And all of us as Kenyans. The cooperative bank, in fact, this bank will grow to heights that are unimaginable because they took the brunt of this beating. I want to tell my daughter, Jean, if she can come, Bahati. Jean Bahati, because ama hawezi kuja aletwe tu. Bahati, you touched my heart. And I don't know how many of you heard what Bahati said. That her mother was 7 months pregnant with her when the tragedy happened. And now out there, watu wanamchekelea, wanasema familia yenu iko na mkosi. We want to pronounce from now, Bahati, hakuna mkosi kwa nyumba yenu. Ulikuwa mkosi wa Kenya nzima. You are just under 25 years. I promise, if God gives me life, to attend your wedding. You will find a wonderful young man. The lessons ambayo kupata, there are many ways of getting to where God had intended you to become. To take you to. So be very strong, my daughter. And as I speak to Bahati, I'm talking to all the others who are affected. Msiseme kwamba mulirogwa, hakuna urogi hapa. Hey. And that is why I want to thank the Dr. Ramana there and Senator Kavindu herself, a worker. She is a faith worker. We need to hold, and really, Kirago, you don't know what you're doing. I heard the general manager saying people can come here, cry the whole day, get prayed for, all right? And look at this wonderful young Kenyan girl. Beautiful. I invite young men to look at Bahati, but I'll have to do the vetting for you. God bless you.
Honorable Eugene Wamalwa.
Sibiokumu, I think in terms of protocol, my seniors have already spoken. I should have spoken before them because the Honorable Martha Karua was Minister for Justice before I came to this building. I was here in 2012 as the last Minister for Justice, and I had a phobia for this building because on the day of the bomb blast, I was a very young lawyer. My practice, I was starting out not far from here, just right behind the Hilton Hotel on Corner House. And when the bomb blast happened, we felt the tremors all the way across the street. And we feared coming to this place because of what we saw happen on that day. So when the late President Kibaki appointed me as Minister for Justice, I said a prayer before entering this building that was called Belly Bottom Building. And I was with Honorable Cheptumo, and Cheptumo is right here. He was Assistant Minister for Justice. He's now Senator for Baringo, but he's also Chair of the Legal Committee, and he and his colleagues in the Senate are supporting Senator Kavindu, the ad hoc committee. I just want to thank you, honorable members of the Senate, for standing with the families who lost their dear ones 25 years ago. And I also want to urge the conversation that we started with Honorable Cheptumo and the American Embassy. You are talking of over 11 years ago when we were in this building, the issue of compensation, that America remains the greatest and the strongest partner of Kenya in the war against terror. And they have stood with us through the years. 2013, when we had the Westgate attack, 2015, when we had the Garissa attack, through 2019, Dusit attack, 2020, when we had a terror attack in Manda Bay, and 3 Americans lost their lives. We have stood together as partners. And we are saying that that partnership comes with friendship and commitment against a common enemy. We say a friend in need is a friend indeed. And that is why today we are urging President Biden and the American government that they should hear the voice of the families of the victims 25 years later and bring closure to this matter through compensation. We want to stand with you. We also want to urge the Kenya government, the Kenya Kwanza government, to put these families first. I'm disappointed that they didn't send a representative here. Hawa wa Kenya pia mungewaweka kama wana Kenya Kwanza, to stand with them, to keep working with the American government to ensure that justice is done and compensation is received. And even as we go into the future, we want to urge the American government, as our partners, let us continue strengthening our partnership in the war against terror, because Kenya as an anchor state remains a major target of terrorism. As we speak, we are still seeing terror attacks right from Mandera down to Lamu. And we urge the Kenya government that the idea of reopening the Kenya-Somalia border is something you need to reconsider. With the resurgence of Al-Shabaab, let us keep our guns and focus trained on the terror enemies that we have across the border. Let us not turn our guns on our citizens. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call upon our distinguished guests, or rather to request them to stay, if they would, for the wreath-laying ceremony. We shall understand if you have to go, but please stay with us until the end. We've had reference to Dr. Ramona of California, but maybe there's a mirror image of her in a representative who is, well, they're both homegrown, but she's further away. Our next speaker, with her committee, if they would join her, is the chairperson of the Ad Hoc Committee on Compensation, Senator Agnes Kavindu.
Good afternoon, everyone. Fellow leaders, the officials of U.S. Embassy, members of the August 7th Bomb Memorial Consortium, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Today, we mark the 25th anniversary of the U.S. Embassy bombing in the Nairobi and Tanzania. We all gather here, brought together by the tragic event that shook the whole world. These attacks were a reminder of the devastating consequences of terrorism and importance of international teamwork of the face of hardship. 224 people were killed and thousands more injured. In Nairobi, 213 people lost their lives. 500 people were wounded. The bombings claimed the lives of hundreds of innocent people and injured thousands more. These attacks serve as a reminder that no country is immune to the threat of terrorism, and that we must remain vigilant in our efforts to prevent such acts from happening again. Ladies and gentlemen, the attack brought many casualties who were pedestrians and motorists in the crowded streets of Nairobi. Vehicles caught fire, persons were blinded, hundreds of Kenyans were orphaned, many Kenyan women were widowed, many suffered miscarriages and complications. The victims suffered effects of post-traumatic stress disorders. They also sustained material, emotional, physical, and financial injury. In the aftermath of the bombings, we witnessed the resilience and the strength of the human rights, the human spirit. The Kenyan and international communities rallied together to provide aid, support, and comfort the affected. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been 25 years, and many of the Kenyan victims of the bomb blasts continue to seek compensation. We make reference to the U.S. Victim Compensation Fund that was created in 2014. Our plea to the U.S. government is to work on the proposal to Congress to initiate amendment through the U.S. Victim of State-Sponsored Terrorist Act. We request consideration to make Kenyan victims eligible to participate in the U.S. Victim Terrorist Compensation Fund. We as the Kenyan government fully appreciate the mutual benefit relations that the two countries have had for many years. This anniversary provides the opportunity for the U.S. to further enhance its long-term commitment to Africa in the U.S.-African relationship. Ladies and gentlemen, the Senate had a committee was to investigate the compensation of the Kenyan victims of the 1998 bombing of U.S. Embassy in Nairobi was established in June 2023. We also we are very grateful to the Speaker of the Senate, Amason Kingi, and his deputy, Kathuri Murungi, for allowing us and giving us the funds to be able to move this noble work that the Senate ad hoc committee is doing. This committee is mandated engage the Ministry of Foreign and Diaspora Affairs to support the eligibility of Kenyans and American victims, spouses, and next of kins in the Victim Compensation Fund pursuant to the Justice for United States Victims of State-Sponsored Terrorist Acts. The committee will further coordinate with the Ministry of Foreign and Diaspora Affairs in the engagement of victims representing the U.S. government and stakeholders at home and abroad to pursue and accomplish the compensation victims of the families of the victims of the Kenyan nationals. And finally, we coordinate with the Ministry of Health to explore subsidized medical treatment for the surviving victims of the bomb blasts. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, as we reflect on the event of 1998, let us not only remember the lives of the lost, but also commitment to promoting peace, understanding, and cooperation among the nations. Let us honor the memory of the victims by working tirelessly to prevent such senseless acts of violence and hatred from ever happening again. Thank you, Senator Agnes Kavindu, MP, the chairperson, and from there now I'll let the members of the ad hoc committee introduce themselves, and if they have a comment, do it please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. All protocol observed. My name is Senator Beatrice Ogola, a member of the ad hoc committee. As a Senate committee and as a representative of the people of Kenya, we begin a journey of seeking for compensation for the victims of the 1998 bomb blast that happened here where we are. All we are saying is that justice to the victims is justice to this country. And we are saying that we are seeking for compensation for the loss of life. We seek compensation for the injuries that were incurred. We seek for compensation for the opportunities that were lost. We have children that dropped out of school. We have people who are seeking for medical attention. And Honorable Chair, just this week, fellow Kenyans in Homa Bay County, in Suba North sub-county, we are going to bury one of the victims by the name Jane Odemba, who 25 years will be buried without compensation. So we seek for justice for all the victims. Thank you.
Senators, leaders, kanisa, na wale waliumia na wale na marafiki wao, Bwana Yesu asifiwe. Yangu mimi ni senator wa Embu County, Alexander Munyi Mondigi, committee member wa hii kamati. Yangu tu ni kuomba tu, kanisa muendelee kuomba na wale wengine, kwa sababu tuko hapa, hatuko senator wa Kenya Kwanza ama Azimio, tuko senator wa serikali ya Kenya, ndio tuweze kuona mwananchi wa Kenya. Kwa kipindi miaka 25, kuna mtu alizaliwa na macho na leo ana macho, kuna mwingine alikatika mguu na alikuwa na mguu, kuna mwingine alikuwa tajiri leo ni masikini. Kwa hivyo tumekuja pamoja kama senator wa serikali ya Kenya, tuweze kupambana na serikali ya Amerika, tuungane pamoja, tuweze kuona ukweli itapatikana namna gani. Kwa sababu mnajua katika Kenya accident ikifanyika, kila mtu mwaka moja, aidha ni ya gari ama ni ya pikipiki, anakuanga amelipwa. Ni aibu kubwa sana tukiwa tumekaa hapa miaka 25 na watu wetu waliumia na wakulipwa. Kwa hivyo nataka nimwahakikishie vile tuko ngurupu moja. Hiyo ingine, wewe chairperson wa kamati, next time kuna mambo ingine yafaa iwe consultation, uangalie ndio wakati unaitana uweze kuwa kama governor angekuwa hapa, kama serikali ingekuwa hapa, kwa sababu unajua serikali ya Kenya Kwanza iko inapenda kila mtu katika Kenya mzima aweze kuwa, tuweze kwenda safari moja. Kwa hivyo next time utajulisha sisi, tutakuonyesha njia. Serikali tuko na hakika, serikali yetu, rais wetu ambaye ni Ruto na deputy wako hapa, na tutajua watasikana na serikali nyingine, tuweze kuona ukweli uko wapi, ndio watu waweze kulipa pesa yao. Asante, ni mimi rafiki wenu. Asante, mbarikiwe sana.
Thank you, our chair of this committee. My name is William Jeptumo, Senator Baringo County, and I'm a member of this committee. They say justice delayed is justice denied. I want to join my colleagues and fellow leaders who have spoken before us that indeed justice for the victims have been delayed for 25 years. And I'm happy today that the Senate of the Republic of Kenya has taken the step to join the victims in pushing for the compensation of the Kenyan victims of the bomb blast. In 1998, I was an employee of CBK just here. And when the bomb blast took place here, the entire CBK building was actually shaking. And the kind of damage that this country suffered continues to be fresh in our memories. And therefore, as happily said by our chair, the mandate of this committee is to join the other stakeholders, the victims, the consortium of victims. The able lady has spoken to us here very well.